Okay, Selectman Steve Herbert is out of state, and, which he did mention at the last meeting, so he will not be attending tonight. Okay, first, of business is approval of minutes. We have the, special meeting Tuesday, December 4th, 2016.
A motion to approve the minutes for the special meeting on Tuesday, January 4th, 2016.
Seconded. Any discussion?
No.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, regular meeting, January 5th, 2016.
Motion to approve the minutes.
I'll second it. Discussion?
I couldn't find it. The only question that I have is on page 2. I couldn't remember under the voter numbers discussion item B, if Ms. Wachowski's first name is spelled that way. I just didn't, for some reason I feel like it's A-L-I-N-E instead of A-I-L-E-E-N.
AI.
I think it's A-L-I. If we could just clarify.
Most of the time she writes it as A. Wachowski.
Okay. And then on page 7 of 9, under the voter number discussion, it says in parentheses, move to item 2, and then parentheses A. Do we need to, under there, say what the motion was, or is already specified under that voter number discussion? I don't know if we needed to do, I don't know if it needed to be there, because we already moved it. I don't think it matters either way, but I don't want to confuse
We're
anybody.
fine.
All right, then that was, I didn't have anything.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, Board of Selectmen special meeting, January 11th, 2016.
Motion to approve,
Second. Discussion.
none,
All in favor?
aye.
Aye. Board of Selectmen special meeting on January 12th.
I make a motion to approve the special meeting for January 12th, 2016.
Second. Discussion.
None.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Takes care of the minutes. Correspondence. Correspondence that I have, and I will read in, dated January 3rd, 2016. Dear Selectmen, it is with a lot of excitement mixed with some sadness that I tendered my resignation as Recreation Director of the town of Thompson. For many years I have enjoyed the privilege of serving generations of families through the recreation programs. I am thrilled to continue serving the residents in my new role as town clerk. Please be assured that I will be a mentor and resource to the newly appointed Recreation Director. Sincerely yours, Renee Waldron. So, that is the end of correspondence. And we move on to Selectmen's comments. Now we've got a couple. I did reference at the last meeting that I was working on straightening out the EDC and doing the research and coming up with a solution to the EDC. That is a chief executive officer's appointment per statute. So I did, with the dates being according in 5 years for 5-year increments, I did appoint 5 people. Charles Obert, John E. Sharp, Joanne Hall, Brian Santos, and Brian Yacino, who is the chair. New one to that one is Charles Obert, because he did ask to, if he could become part of that. That helps out, gives us a full board. And all of those, starting with, they start in 12/31 of 16 and run through 12/31 of 20. Each being staggered, so Obert 16, Sharp 17, Powell 18, 19 for Santos, and 20 for Yacino. So those are the expirations for that. So we have a full EDC, so we did take care of that, and we're back on track with the proper sequence that the statute requires.
And they've all been notified of their.
Yes, and they've all
Perfect.
been sworn in, because they do have a meeting tomorrow night.
Yep.
Okay, there was a question about the CLMP poles, especially the one up on Wilsonville Road. How come it was still, the two poles were still next to each other? I did reach out to Sean Johnson, which is our area rep for CLMP, Eversource, and he said that under normal conditions, CLMP has to come out, remove the electrical first, and then the other two AT&T and cable do theirs after. So we weren't sure what was on the poles at the time. I did tell Sean the pole number. He did go out, come to find out that they did not do what they were supposed to do by removing the electrical on the top. So the other two cannot do anything till that is done. That's being scheduled, should be done within the next 30 days, so that way AT&T then can be notified, and as well as Charter. If there are any poles of that nature that they do repair, that have been repaired in that fashion, and they've been out there for some time, the public can contact CLMP and file it, just like you do with a street light out. They can contact this office, and as long as I have the pole number and location, I can contact Sean, and he'll assign the work to us, so that way it can be dealt with. As far as how long it takes to do AT&T and Charter, that's out of Eversource's control, so we just have to keep pushing on that. I will be scheduling the transfer station advisory committee meeting on the 28th, which is at 7 PM on a Thursday. EDC is done. I have requested the statistics to compare for the past couple of years from Troop D. When I get those, I will hand those out. There was a question on Mary Bennett for the animal control facility. I did speak with Mary. Mary is up to date on everything as far as standards and protocols, and they are inspected once a year. I did give you the edited draft of the villager. Hopefully we'll be able to get that in shortly and start our columns. Let's see. I did not pull the Richardson Inferno property for you as of yet.
That's what, I had stated that I could also just request that privately if that was something that.
I just haven't had a chance to. And the compactor is tonight. I still got to look at the Board of Finance for the extension of the assessor's position. And we're still looking into the assessor's position as well as to a permanent resolution. That's all I've got. You have anything?
No, I just, with the draft version for, that's to be submitted for the villager, there's some dashes as to where we can put these openings. Do we know where we wanna put that on? I know the former website had an opportunity section. Do we wanna?
I would say
try to do
that's the
that
thing. I
again?
have not had a chance to ask Tina if, because I know you can do some content on the website.
On the
As-
homepage?
I can't like create new pages, but I can edit what's already there.
Okay, so if we have a search bar, can you rename it?
Yeah.
So that would have to go through the, okay, so that easy, so we would do it under opportunities and do employment,
Do we have to
volunteer.
wait though to see how we're gonna get that on the?
I'll call them tomorrow
Okay.
and see what we can rename it, and I'll let you know so we can get that in.
So then as an aside, Tina, do you have a login, a username and password to access the new website and the old, what the old one was?
Well, they're not two separate things, I can't access
It's
the
all the same?
website anyway, just.
Okay, so the new one you can access and you have the homepage accessibility? Just so we
Might, I've
can-
never looked to see if I can edit that one page, I'm not sure.
Okay. I don't have anything to report at this time. We pretty much covered everything under the list.
Okay.
Thank you for checking with Mary to make sure that we're, up to speed on the, protocols.
Okay, citizens' comments.
Thank you. Kevin Walsh, Plain Road. A couple of things, Kenny.
Sure.
I think it was on January 6th, you were supposed to meet with the superintendent of school and the plant engineer and have a powwow over the status of the leaking of the tanks up there. Did that meeting take place and anything productive come out of that?
Meeting has taken place, information was given to him as to the status of where we're at in the process,
Yeah,
and he is now reaching out to the other people that have been involved for the additional information that he needs in order to come to a conclusion as to what direction we need to go and what the best avenue of approach. And
who was he?
the town attorney.
Okay, okay. All right.
He had some questions, we had to get information
Answer
back to him.
first before we, okay.
Sure.
And speaking of the town attorney, at the early January, there was a public hearing in wetlands. And the town attorney rendered an opinion regarding what he considered to be the current status of what Star Road is
At that time.
at that time.
Correct.
Now, was that letter also forwarded to the Board of Selectmen? Were they
Yes.
CC'd on that?
I was CC'd and I passed it
Okay.
on to the board. Because I got it the night of the,
Right,
wetlands.
would you consider it to be appropriate for you to read that letter to the public and enter it as a matter of public record, since the attorney's opinion is extremely significant relative to what people here in town hall who are employed by the town have been telling the citizens of the town, and they are making it a very firm statement, and they're using their position in town, employed by the town, to render credence to the status of Star Road, and Attorney St. Ange has a very significant different opinion than what town employees are stating. So I think that needs to be read publicly and entered into the record so we can shut some people up finally in regards to their proclamation of Star Road. Thank you.
Anybody else? I don't have that letter here with me, Ken.
Okay, but maybe at the next meeting?
But
Thank
like
you,
I said, I didn't bring it with me.
Okay, thank you. Thank you,
You're
Kenny.
Mr. Bear.
Paul Bear, Thompson Road. This issue's come up a couple of times in the past few years, and it hasn't been corrected. And it has to do with flying the American flag at night without it being lit. That's the code, Title 4, Chapter 1, the flag. An electric eye, or photoelectric eye, on the light that lights the flag would be appropriate instead of having to keep changing the timer. Because you fly the flag at night and it's not lit. Regarding the Board of Selectmen, and the previous administration was Forrester and Lanky. Selectman Forrester took over pretty much everything. She had oversight on the solar project, I'd like to know what the status is of that. She had oversight on the library HVAC system, and now it seems that the only thing that came out of that oversight was 2 years of delay, and now spending $6,500 on a consultant to look into it. Next, on the website, there's no agent for the elderly appointment. I don't know if that's been done and it's just been neglected to be posted. Regarding the website, icons are still inoperable. According to some personnel town personnel in this town, in the town hall, the website looks like, to put it nicely, fecal material. There's erroneous information on the website. I don't think Mike Martin is still a member of the Turtle Lot Trust Board. I don't think he's a justice of the peace in town anymore since he doesn't live here. Files are missing, 2016 file folders, are missing for the Board of Code of Appeals for 2015 and 16. 2014, there's one agenda but no minutes filed. The Board of Selectmen, there's files that are, labels are being put on inconsistently, whether it's year and type, or type and year. It should be consistent one way or another. There's no 2016 recordings. There's a tab for budget reviews, but there's no year, and there's no 2015 files. The Agricultural Commission, there's a listing where Carolyn Word is still using a personal email address, and I believe there was a policy against that. Also like to know if you're gonna continue funding a separate website for the Conservation Commission when that could be handled through the town's website. There was a decision made by the Board of Selectmen that that wasn't gonna occur a year or so ago, maybe even longer than that. Regarding the transfer station, I would ask that they investigate, because those people do like to work, a pass to be able to just drop off recyclables without dumping trash. And that it be investigated about outsourcing the services at the transfer station. Commission memberships, there are commissions where members don't appear and don't show up for meetings. They're not participating, but yet they're carried on as members. I think that should be looked into. And last but not least, the driveway application for River Junction Estates, I guess it's still pending. No decision's been made. It should be denied due to the opinion of Attorney St. Ange that there is no street there. It's a requirement of getting a driveway permit for the ordinance that there be a town street. Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Janet?
I'm Janet Blanchett, and I'm chairperson of the Building Porticelli Improvement Committee, and with us this evening is Wayne from CME, who is going to give us a project update. This is the Building Porticelli Mill, and we're doing phase 1 and phase 2 environmental study using grant money from the state of Connecticut.
If you don't mind, I was asked to bring along a little presentation. I'll try to go through it really quick. Assuming it comes up okay. It does. If you've
Behind you, Rob.
there we go. Good. All right. Everybody see that all right? It's beneficial, I think, to see pictures. If you've been by the old mill site, you may have seen some activity there in the last couple of months. We've been doing some work out there. So you can't really see what we're doing because most of the work is kind of away from the road. So I'm hoping to quickly show you what we're doing and why. As Janet mentioned, the town received a grant. Just to recap a little bit, I did talk about this a couple of months ago at a Board of Selectmen meeting, but So the town got a grant. There's been a lot of involvement by the town, the Building Corticelli Improvement Committee for a good number of years now, working to get this money. And if you're not familiar with the Brownfield grant from the state, this is through the Department of Economic and Community Development. You know, a brownfield is a former industrial or commercial site where future use is affected by real or perceived contamination. I think most people would agree that, you know, just looking at some of the pictures there from the mill site, that there's definitely some perceived contamination, and we're trying to figure out just how much actual contamination there is. So our charge here, as Janet said, we're doing phase 1, phase 2, actually phase 3 environmental investigations as well, and I'll talk about what those are, but the whole idea of it is to eliminate uncertainty. These are brownfield sites because people don't, because of the fears that they have of liability and environmental contamination, and they might be a perfect location to build on and do things with, but for the perception that you're gonna be getting into a real mess, a real headache if you tried to redevelop them, creates this condition of a brownfield. So what we're trying to do is eliminate the uncertainty around that, figure out what there actually is out there, and come up with a roadmap for reuse and redevelopment. So the questions that we're trying to figure out here with this grant money is, where are the areas of concern? That's where do we think there might be contamination? And then secondly, are those contaminated? How bad is the contamination? Not just is there contamination, but is it bad enough to warrant some kind of cleanup? What are the alternatives for the cleanup? And another kind of a side piece here, but also very important, especially for a site like this, are there floodplains? And what are feasible options for redevelopment, lastly? We'd like to be able to, again, get a roadmap for redevelopment. So that carries through to not only what's out there and how bad is it, but are there solutions, and are they, you know, what solutions are they, and how economically viable they are, how feasible they are to implement. So the steps of the investigation, the phase 1 environmental site assessment, this is basically a review of all available information. We do local, state, and federal reviews of files. We do a reconnaissance. We interview people that are knowledgeable. Some of the people in the room here have been very helpful to help us out with getting documents. And, we review historical documents like photos and maps and facility records. Basically anything to tell us where to look for potential contamination. We finished this, we started on this and finished it, I think, in the month of November. And so we basically, at the end of this investigation, we issued a report, and we identified 17 areas of concern where historical contaminant releases are suspected. That's not cut off, and I can count. There's 14, there's actually, number 12 has 4 separate areas. So we lumped them together because they're former transformer areas, and they have very similar issues. So we started after we finished the phase 1 and we identified those 17 areas, we started, in December, we started the phase 2/phase 3 investigation. And again, phase 2 is to determine, you know, is there any contamination in the areas of concern that we identified in the phase 1? And then phase 3 is, if there is contamination, how bad is it? And we're doing these simultaneously for efficiency's sake. We can not only determine whether there's contamination, but we're taking samples, and then we can take additional ones to figure out how far does it go, how bad is it, how deep is it. So the activities that you probably can't see, or if you've looked over the fence, you might see us doing some of this. We do shallow soil sampling. This is for things that are on the surface that we'd expect to see the contaminants right near the surface. This is one of our geologists sampling for shallow soil around a concrete pad that's actually on an island in the French River. Some people don't realize there's actually a long island there that's between the tail race and the river, but he's sampling for PCB contamination. That pad was a former transformer location. There were three 500 kVA transformers. We do ground penetrating radar. This is a way to look underground and to basically see what's under there. The image on the right is actually an image from the site. And we're looking for things in the shallow zone that give a weird reflection. If you've had any experience with imaging, it's not really dissimilar to some of the imaging that's done human bodies at the doctor's office. But basically, we're trying to see are there tanks or pipes or things like that, and could help us really fine tune where we sample. Next, we do a lot of soil borings and monitoring well installation. Soil borings are really especially helpful really close to the river. I'll show you the alternative for this, but we use a direct push rig that basically uses a pneumatic hammer that drives a sampler into the ground. There's another couple of pictures of it. And then the sampler comes out, the samples come out in dedicated acetate sleeves basically, and shows the different types of material that are in there. Picture of the next thing that we do is test pits. Where we can't drill, and there's a lot of places out there where we have trouble drilling, we use an excavator to clear debris away and then do test pits. You can go up in the tower. I found out it's actually safe to go up there and shoot a picture down there, so that was interesting. There's a lot of debris out there, as these pictures can show, and so the excavator allows us to move the debris and then actually do the test pits directly after that. You can see us taking the soil up, putting it on plastic sheeting. The picture on the right shows some contaminated soil. It's probably the worst stuff we actually encountered out there. This is a test pit that was dug right alongside of a 30,000 gallon fuel oil tank that held number 6 fuel oil. And you can see off to the left, the really black stuff was actually some fuel oil that had spilled over, probably from an overfill, not from a leak from the tank. But long ago, it had oozed out and kind of settled in along the side. It looks terrible. It's not the greatest of stuff, but it's not a huge area of contamination either. But at the base of it, where that stuff is, you can see the water table, and you can actually see a sheen on there. So some oil has gotten into the environment in this area. So that's how we do our testing. Basically, a summary of the results to date. In a nutshell, there's really been no big surprises. It's a good thing because we were trying to maximize the value of the grant and get as much done as possible within the budget, and I think we're gonna come in under budget. Soil contamination is present in most areas of concern. That sounds like bad news, but it's not hard for us to find contamination when we look for it on a site like this. You gotta imagine it's many years of activity, and we looked at these places for a reason, and it turns out that there's contamination. We're in the process in most of those areas figuring out what the extent and degree of contamination is. Right now, none of the areas that are contaminated look worse than we anticipated. We haven't run into some massive thing that we keep chasing and trying to find the end of it. We do have some more testing to do, but at this point it looks fairly good. The third bullet point, most soil contamination appears to be in areas nearest the French River. That sounds kind of bad, especially if you're thinking that the stuff is oozing into the river, but in fact, most of the stuff is fairly well concentrated in these areas, doesn't seem to be migrating very far. And the fact that it's closest to the French River means that it's not nearest to the roads. We haven't found it out by the roads in the places that are most likely to be redeveloped. So the things that would cause an impediment to redevelopment, we have not found. That's good news. The fourth bullet item, I think it's important because we were fearful that the west side of the property, on the west side of the French River, had a large drum dump. There was documents at the DEEP's offices that said there was a drum dump there, and nobody could tell us what that really meant. And so we went in there with the kind of the worst case thought, let's find out if that's true or not. And it looks like there might have been drums that were staged there 35 or 40 years ago or something like that, and they may have been taken away. Right now, we've gone through that area. We're going to be actually back out there tomorrow doing more ground penetrating radar to really fine tune it, but we have not found some big area where drums were dumped and then covered over with soil, so that's good news. And no other dumping areas out there that we've discovered, so also good news. The work ongoing, that's still to be completed. We're doing additional test pits, we're doing additional soil testing. These are basically in all of those areas of concern. We're getting some lab data back, and we need to kind of move out and find the limits of the contamination that we found. We're going to do additional monitoring well installation and groundwater sampling and figure out what groundwater impacts there are. We've done a little bit of that already. We need to finish that up. We're going to do the final survey for our documentation and also for floodplain mapping. And also, I think we can do this, wasn't in our original scope, but we can do this as within the budget. We're going to estimate the volume of the debris piles that are out there. We're gonna be surveying them in the area anyway, and with a few extra shots, we can get some fairly reasonable estimates of the volume of all that debris. And anybody who's gonna be redeveloping the site will wanna know that. We expect to complete this, the reports by early to mid-spring. And then afterward, we'll probably have another informational meeting. I think that's part of the plan. Before we actually commence the remedial action plan and the redevelopment plan, we'd like to get input from the committee, from the town on that. The owner, everybody should have, get some input in if they'd like to, because we learn a lot from other people. And so the last thing, we'll be having additional public informational meetings, again, to get people, get people's input, make sure everybody's satisfied that things are going according to the plan. We find weird things out there. There's no explanation for this, it's just, if you were missing a toy, Volkswagen bus with eyes in the front, that might be where it is. And it's kind of horrible out there, but at times it's kind of pretty too. So, thank you. Hope that was quick enough. But does anybody have any questions?
I have a few. For the phase 3, what's the evaluation or equation by which Sandy uses to determine how bad the contamination is?
That's a good question. The site is subject to the Connecticut Property Transfer Act, which basically means that it's also subject to a set of regulations called the remediation standard regulations. Those basically set the standards, and there's different criteria for soil and for groundwater depending on the intended uses. For example, if it's a residential area, it has more stringent uses than an industrial commercial area, for example, just because of exposure.
Yeah.
So we look at both the most stringent criteria, because we don't want to right off the bat assume that it's not suitable for residential purposes if it can be, if it meets those criteria. But we also look at the industrial commercial criteria so that we can, basically from a feasibility standpoint, when we do evaluate the feasibility of remediating the site, it may be infeasible for some of these areas to make them suitable for a residential area, but they may very well be suitable for industrial commercial, because there's less sensitive populations. There are also other factors that come into play, like the floodplain issues, and basically, if it's in an area that can't possibly be developed anyway for residential purposes, then you know that you're not trying to meet those kind of criteria.
And then when you're using the excavator, is there any possibility, excuse me, that you're disturbing or could further further enhance a contaminated area?
There is, we put the soil on plastic, contaminated soil goes, on plastic. We put it back into the hole basically the way it came out, to try to limit that. There isn't, in some situations, not on this site, but in some places you'll find, you have to be very careful because you could take a place, take shallow soil contamination, for example, and inadvertently introduce it to a deeper zone that
Right.
doesn't have it already. The soils out there are just very coarse gravel and sand and fill materials. There is no like natural separation between different zones that are like contaminated or not contaminated. For the most part, if there was contamination released, as you saw, the water table is fairly shallow. So, for example, the oil release, the stuff's basically went down and immediately hit the water table. And these are mostly lighter than water compounds. They're gonna float there.
Okay.
But we take every opportunity to try to limit the possibility of any kind of, that we exacerbate any problem. You see us drilling out there is a real horrible situation because of the access and the rocks and everything. But we do limit ourselves to just drilling when we're getting close to the river so that we don't create any structural problems, we don't create any possibilities for any erosion or sedimentation of soils.
And then just my last question,
Yep.
sorry. The picture that you did show with the toy that you found, that's not too old of a toy, so I'm wondering how, because you've been on that site so many times, how well or buttoned up you feel that that area is when you're entering and exiting during this process in terms of not letting residents enter or exit on potentially contaminated areas.
I'm flattered actually, because I had a toy like that when I was really young, so for you to say that it's not a very old toy, it's great. But I don't know if I don't think it's that young of a toy either. I mean,
It looks like it's from the movie Cars, and I only know because I have a 5-year-old son. So that's why I was inquiring if there are children that are able to enter either during this process or in general.
they aren't. The place is pretty much buttoned up,
Okay.
you know, with fences, and it was found in an area, it was very close to a low spot in the river. I suppose it's possible that it washed in there. It's basically was found in the one area that was low enough where floodwaters might have come up there maybe in, you know, a few years ago when we had the floods. But yeah, I guess I had the toy before the Cars movie came in. Do you have any questions, Ken? Does anybody? Yeah.
Paul Bear, Thompson Road. There is a map in the town hall, or at least there was a map in the town hall that showed contamination levels throughout that site, chromium, mercury, lead, significant high levels. Are you aware of the map, and how do they compare to the readings that you've obtained out there?
We're in the process of looking at some of the heavy metal compounds. One of the items that we're working on right now and getting toward the end is to characterize shallow soils for heavy metal contamination. And that's a little bit of a problem because the shallow soils are not necessarily shallow right now. Some places they're buried under a lot of debris, but we're going back to what was the ground surface when the place was operational. As it turns out, the data that you're referencing, I think, came about when the property was close to being, when the facility was close to being closed down. And the company, Malcolm Perney was the consultant for the Belden Corticelli company when they were shutting it down, and they did a lot of testing of shallow soils in the area for heavy metals. Appears preliminarily, and it's probably too early to say this with any certainty, but the data look like the historic data and some of the preliminary data that we have look like the soils, shallow soils were impacted probably by a lot of basically residues of coal burning, ash, you know, that had been belched out of the stack for 100 years or something, and you know, slowly settle out in the same way that you get residues along highways because of you know, residues from automobile traffic. So what we see are some lead concentrations and some other heavy metals, especially lead, which is the one that's the most prevalent. We see those in the shallow soils, and then we start to see, we see them dissipate with depth. That one of our greatest challenges now is to figure out what the spatial distribution of that is and the depth. It isn't like any of the other areas of concern confined to one area. It's a more of a ubiquitous problem, and yet there's other areas where it's a little bit more concentrated, and we have to figure out, is that because of any specific location that discharged more of it? So we're in the process of kind of determining that. But yeah, we're familiar with the previous data. We did pretty exhaustive searches of all the laboratory data that was generated over the years when the place was operational.
Okay. Anybody else?
Just a quick question. I know you've been moving right along with this, and the weather's been very favorable. Based on where we are into where you're going, we're expecting snow. Looks like pretty significant on Saturday.
Did you do anything about
No, everybody can pray, obviously, and hopefully it'll just slide by, which would be great for everybody's budget and what is going on. But where are you as far as, you were trying to get most of your sampling and stuff done before the snow came when we talked in November.
Yeah,
So how are you along with that as far as?
we got most of the, we can work through most of the snow. We got most of the shallow soil sampling done that we can access. Tried to get that done before the ground froze for obvious reasons. Didn't succeed in every case, but we're mostly done with the things that were real critical as far as that's concerned. The most treacherous areas of the site, where we had to move a lot of debris, we wanted to make sure we weren't trying to do that if there's a lot of snow, because it becomes practically, it's very difficult for us to keep everything clean like we did with plastic when you're dealing with a lot of snow. We do have more test pits and more borings to do. The rigs that we'll be using are, we can get in and out of there. I mean, actually, the excavator is not a problem. We can still do test pits with that, and mostly, or pretty much done the worst case areas for that. Now we're just trying to basically connect the dots to a few places where we don't suspect contamination, but we need to basically be able to draw on a map the area, the limits. The drilling that we'll have to do, we still have monitoring wells to put in. We were putting them in last winter to give you some indication, and I hope I hope we don't see that again. It was right about this time last year when it started to snow, it didn't stop. So yeah, we're in good shape though.
So we're right on track.
We're right on track, schedule-wise, budget-wise, we're gonna come in below budget, so.
No, but I mean in the process of gathering it.
In the process of gathering, we're right on schedule. I think we had estimated 6 to 7 months to do everything, and I think that we had a little bit of a gift, obviously, in the last 2 months, that weather-wise, so I think we moved along a little faster than we expected. So, we're in really good shape. Okay? Thank you.